So this is an area that we just got done logging. It had been damaged by wind and insects and drought. So the birch and the balsam, paper birch like that, and the balsam fir like that, which are both very sensitive to stress and also fairly short-lived, started to fall out on its own, and we let it happen. Didn't freak out and come in immediately. We've for years left white pine and red pine and other species, but primarily white pine for our interests here in the canopy, and especially along that lake edge. That's Roland Lk, and those trees standing there are near its edge, and so they got plenty of sunlight following the whatever major last disturbance there was, especially the extractive logging activity of around 1900 in this area. It wasn't us, but the previous owner, Pillsbury, I think, or maybe Joyce. In any case, we had the advantage of having these trees that were of seed producing age, and so we've left most of them, cut a few, but left 90% of them over 50 years, and they've done their job to produce natural, native regeneration. And so for years we've bud capped here but didn't have enough light, but in so doing we kept these trees alive and sort of growing straight, from protecting them from deer browse with these bud caps, which are fastened to the terminal leader covering the bud, and 95% of the time effectively deterring deer browse. Thor, are you listening? Good boy. In any case, before the harvest, I came through and did a typical bud capping, which is not every single tree, but well spaced, and the dominant seedlings, if there is such thing as a dominant seedling. But I didn't get them all because I hadn't really anticipated that we would, I knew we were going to log this area, but I didn't do what I should have done, which is bud capped every tree, because a number of the seedlings got killed and the bud caps knocked off and leaned over and underneath these dead tops from the logging activity. However, this site is still fully stocked by our standards with white pine. Now, I need to bud cap that one, but I can't while I'm holding the camera. And I need to bud cap that one. Those bud caps survived. But I'm going to walk you guys through what we're doing here to take advantage of the survival of these seedlings. Because of the type of logging that we do, because of the type of logger that we have who sees this and knows how to make his or her, in this case his, moves strategically. He can't save every tree, but he can think. And when he sees these bud caps, it's a sign. Just like when he sees these pink ribbons, it's a good visual for him at distance to decide where he's going to drop an 80 or 60 or 40 or 100 foot or 120 foot tall tree to make it, oriented so that he can deal with it with minimal damage, and in the felling to do as little damage, or in some cases to do damage where we intend to do damage for disturbance reasons. But I've been spending a number of days coming back and bud capping the trees that got missed, bud capping the trees that where the bud cap was pulled off during the limbing or the skidding process. And I've been digging down in these top piles and reorienting these trees vertically so that they don't start growing crooked because they're leaned over like that one. I'm going to use this branch to prop that tree back up straight. Heck, it might not have even been straight to begin with, but now it is. And in many cases, the trees were buried under the snow because the snow came early and heavy, and they were bent over and I couldn't see them. So they were protected. But then once the snow melts, you'd think that the deer browse risk is over because the deer have other things to eat with the snow melted, but that's not always the case. This is a critical 2-week period where the snow melts and there's not a lot of green growing, and so they go after the less desirous food or desirable food for them, which is the tree buds. But it's still here's a seedling that got destroyed completely, and then next to it is one where what was the terminal leader was broken, and that's not going to recover. And so I had bud capped that previously, but now this branch will take over right there, and that'll grow up straight. When that tree reaches 40-inch in diameter, you'll never be able to tell from the outside of it that there was ever a deviation, because it's going to grow up like that. And that's got a long way to go before we'd ever harvest it, and if we ever do. And then, yeah, here's one that is just mildly leaned over by this very small branch. But we'll even, do this, or just break this off completely. If I needed it to help it stand up straight, I'd probably leave it there, but instead I'll just break it off, and now that's free to grow vertically. Had we done hardcore harvesting with lots of machinery movement, multiple trips, then rather than 2% of the site being this, which is fine. I mean, all kinds of good things are going to happen here because we didn't compact the soil. We even saved some that are looking kind of scraggly, but they survived the skidding. But for the most part, when we concentrated our handful of lightweight skids in one area in order to save the standing trees, but also to minimize the ground travel for all the reasons we're talking about. Had we not done that, then most of this stand would now look like this, and we would have to plant. And we've planted easily 10 million trees, white pine trees, in a couple generations, and it's expensive. And I'm doing as little of it as possible. The only reason we do it is like in this trail if we so choose, but in this case, we've got so much white pine that I want other things to grow up naturally in here, and some of it will be white pine. Yeah, so what was the other reason? Oh, the other reason that we plant is to sometimes bring climate adapted or assisted migration of climate adapted stock from a southern seed zone that will cross genetically with the seed that you see there, someday, 30, 40 years from now, when the trees that we plant get tall enough. We've done a lot of this over the last 40 years. But anyway, to prepare for a warmer climate, because at best, we're already dealing with 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to deal with another 5 or more. And so having white pine that has the genetics of being able to survive, say, central Wisconsin instead of extreme northern Minnesota is going to give us some diversity and some adaptability. All right, boys. I talked about how we are salvaging these white pine trees that were very intentionally naturally regenerated by nature, and we just assisted by letting it happen or encouraging it to happen in a means other than clear cutting, because that works too, but it doesn't work for this mix that we're looking at here of sugar maple, red maple, paper birch, white spruce, ironwood, balsam fir, mature white pine, red oak. You know, that's not a clear-cut deal for us. And so this natural regeneration emerges, and why wipe it out through a silvicultural harvest method or strategy that damages it? So look at all of this that we've saved. And here's the economics part. It would cost well over $1,000 an acre to reestablish what you see right here. And so yes, we've spent money, and we've deferred our harvest, and we've done costly silviculture, physically demanding, high-cost manual silviculture, harvest and tending here. And but is it worth it? You bet it is, because to get this quantity and quality for what we've invested in it, as opposed to doing it the hard way and the straight up expensive way, which is to harvest heavily without concern for the advanced regeneration, and then having to come in and plant and then wait until they get to this size, we've definitely saved money. And in the meantime, we've retained the aesthetic value of this site and the wildlife value of this site, the carbon storage, the carbon sequestration. I mean, we're barely going to miss a beat on the storage and the sequestration of carbon, and I am concerned about climate change.